Today we're taking an in-depth look at the lawsuits that now surround Amendment 4. That was the amendment that voters approved to restore the right to vote to certain felons in Florida, but lawmakers made some amendments to that requiring felons to pay back all of their court costs and restitution before they can get the right to vote. And now there are lawsuits regarding that. So let's bring in Patricia Brigham. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of Florida. Thanks for joining us, Patricia.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so the lawsuits that now surround the changes that Florida lawmakers made to Amendment 4 and the governor just signed into law is where this lawsuit comes into play. So take it from there. Who exactly is suing? Where does this stand right now?
Well, the League of Women Voters of Florida is on a lawsuit with the Orange County NAACP, and the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU and the ACLU has filed the lawsuit. We believe that the legislature did not adhere or respect the will of the voters when they did this 11th hour amendment to Senate Bill 7066, attaching fines and fees to Amendment 4, which were not there. The ballot language said nothing about that whatsoever. So we feel that essentially this is a poll tax, and we should have been rid of poll taxes at the end of the Jim Crow era, and unfortunately that is not the case.
Now, it has been cited that during every time there's an amendment that's going to go on to the ballot, it has to go before the Florida Supreme Court to make sure that the language is going to be the way that it should be. And so before this was ever put on the ballot, the lawyers were asked by a Supreme Court justice, does all terms of sentence include restitution and court costs? And the lawyer arguing to put this on the ballot said, yes, that is included. So do you see that as a legal hurdle for you?
No, I don't see that as a legal hurdle at all. The ballot language was clear.
It didn't specifically say that restitution was part of what would have to be, paid back as part of the terms of sentence, but I guess it didn't also say that it wasn't. It was sort of left up to interpretation, or do you just think there was no gray area whatsoever?
Well, when a debt is paid, it's paid. And it was clear that as long as the returning citizen was not convicted of murder or felony sexual assault, then their debt has been paid once they completed the terms of their sentence.
And let's say this stands. Let's say that the challenge doesn't get the result that you want, and this stands. Do you see that Florida really even has a way to implement that? Because what we've heard from people in the legal community is we don't hardly even track this stuff. And most of the time, these court costs, they don't ever get repaid. Something of a fraction, like 5% of it ever gets paid back. And there's no real tracking of it. So how are people, as you understand it, even supposed to be told whether they sort of qualify to have their rights restored or not?
We have been attempting to address this. We had a series of legal clinics with attorneys who volunteered to work with returning citizens on a pro bono basis so that they could advise them and help them research whether they have any fines or fees that are existing, and they can help advise them on what to do as far as registration to vote. But look, I mean, this is essentially making it pay to play. I mean, your ability to vote should not be based on your pocketbook.
But if a court has ordered you to, let's say I'll make something up, you've broken into somebody's house and you took $5,000 worth of their stuff and you went and you sold it, and you're now been ordered to pay that person back, why isn't that part of your term?
Well, I think that's a good question, but I would have to return to the ballot language, which doesn't go into all of this about the fines and fees. It said that when the debt is paid, it's paid. When the sentence is over, it's over. And that, with the stipulations about felony, sex assault, and murder. Otherwise, 1.5 million returning citizens should be receiving their right to vote, which 65% of Florida voters approved when they put Amendment 4 over the finish line in November. What we have seen our state legislature do is what they do frequently, which is they don't completely listen to the will of the voters. Governor DeSantis came out and said when he read the bill, or excuse me, when he signed the bill, that he didn't really agree with the bill. Well, it's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing. This was the will of the voters. And the last time we checked, we live in a democracy.
And of those 1.5 million people who stand to have their rights reinstated and able to vote again, a large portion of them may well vote Democrat. We have a Republican-controlled government in Florida. I am going to go out on a limb and say that you might see some connection there.
Well, I will say this, that the League of Women Voters of Florida is a nonpartisan organization. We have a strong tradition of not taking positions on candidates or political party. We do take strong policy positions once we study them and reach consensus. And this is a strong position we have on returning the constitutional right to vote to those ex-felons. This is not about partisanship. We don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, if you're an independent. We want you to vote if you're an eligible voter, and we will register all eligible voters, no matter what their party.
And the judge who's going to hear this is U.S. District Judge Mark Waller, and he's out of Tallahassee. He's certainly no stranger to the topic of felon voting. He has been down similar roads before in his courtroom. When it came to the way that Florida used to do this, you had to go before a clemency board that only met a couple of times a year. It was very rare to be able to have your rights restored, and he certainly was not a fan of that system. So considering the judge that this will be before and the topic, how are you feeling about your chances and a timetable here?
Well, it's always hard to predict. Judge Walker has made very strong statements on this issue in the past. We are hopeful that this will be expedited. We are hearing that it might. So we are keeping our fingers crossed and our attitudes optimistic.
And in the meantime, you've probably heard, Patricia, here in Hillsborough County, there's a movement to do what's called a rocket docket to see if they could check into, letting people quickly know, here's where you stand on your restitution, here's how you can pay it off, or maybe even you can do community service instead and put that on an expedited path. What do you think about that?
We congratulate the state attorney over there for coming up with that alternative plan.
All right.
Definitely.
We'll certainly be paying attention to what happens in court. This is one to watch. A lot of people voted for Amendment 4, and things have changed over the months, so we'll see what happens. Patricia Brigham, thank you for joining us and explaining your position on it. We thank you for that.
Absolutely.